Hi, my name is Jasmine Edmondson, and I'm a peer advisor and one of 3 marketing and communication interns at LSU Academic Programs Abroad. I'm really excited to be here with you all today and serve as your moderator for this webinar. In honor of Women's History Month, APA decided to host a webinar for women who are interested in learning best practices on personal security, which can be used while abroad. We have speakers from Sexual Trauma Awareness and Response, commonly known as STAR, Tigers Against Sexual Assault, commonly known as TASA, and LSU Police Department, who will be providing very insightful information for us. Our last unofficial speaker is one of our very own, Marissa Baham, who is a study abroad manager and program coordinator for programs and exchanges outside of Europe. Marissa will talk to you about safety resources you can use while abroad. So I really hope you enjoy this webinar and leave feeling more knowledgeable and confident about personal security. Our first speaker is Angela Golden from STAR. Angela has been an educator on sexual assault prevention for nearly 10 years. Before working as a community education director at STAR, she was an education coordinator for Baton Rouge Children's Advocacy Center. In this role, she educated adults on strategies they can use to protect children and prevent child sexual abuse. She also served as a prevention services coordinator for child advocacy services in St. Charles and St. John Parish, where she further developed her skills. To continue her expertise on youth safety, Angela became a trained facilitator in various curriculums that focus on topics such as the prevention of human trafficking and sexual violence. So I really hope that you enjoy her presentation and you learn something new.
Thank you so much for having me on this panel to give this information. It's always so cringy for me to hear the bio part, so I always just try to smile through it, but thank you for that warm introduction. Before we get started with any information, at STAR, we always like to give trigger warnings. Sometimes this information can be triggering, whether you've experienced sexual assault or sexual violence or know someone who has. We want to make sure in any presentation that we offer that you are able to take care of yourself, whether that is, turning your camera off during the presentation, taking a moment to step aside or mute the conversation for a moment. But definitely, we always prioritize taking care of yourself in any presentation. Next slide. And so just before I get into the information on sexual violence and sexual trauma, I just wanted to give a little information on STAR itself and our mission. So our mission is to support survivors of sexual trauma, improve systems response, and create social change to end sexual violence. And we do that by supporting survivors of sexual trauma through free and confidential advocacy, counseling, and legal services. So our services are completely free. This is through grants, through donations. We are able to provide these services because we know oftentimes that when there is a cost associated with a service, that could potentially have a barrier for a survivor, and we definitely want to make sure that they are taken care of. Also, what our services are available to college-age students. A lot of people aren't aware that if something does happen on campus, if you need assistance, you can reach out to STAR, and we have a vast service area. If you want to go to the, I believe that's the next slide. Okay. So our service area, we cover 15 parishes. We started in the Baton Rouge office. We branched out of the Rape Crisis Center, which was associated with the DA's office. And in 2012, our CEO and President Rachel Hebert created STAR, Sexual Trauma Awareness and Response. So out of our Baton Rouge office, we cover all of these parishes listed here. And then we were able to expand into New Orleans, in our NOLA office, and then Sinlaw is actually Alexandria, and we were able to expand in that area as well. So we kind of run across Louisiana. We're not in Louisiana, the entire state. We have just these 15 parishes. A lot of people think we are cover the entire state, but that is not possible right now with the staff we have. So this is a way to kind of reach out to us. We have our website information here, as well as our 24/7 hotline. As I mentioned before, oftentimes people are triggered by information in the presentation or by information they're seeing, as Jordan mentioned, in the news or on in their regular life, in their day-to-day life. So we have this 24/7 hotline that anyone can call if they're in a crisis, if they're unsure of what just happened or where to go, how to get assistance. Our hotline is staffed by employees during the day from 8:30 to 5, and then trained volunteers from 5 and beyond, and on the weekends. Next slide. So what we wanted to do is just share some overall information and related to you studying abroad. But what we know, and as I mentioned with talked to Jasmine about sexual trauma and sexual violence, it's universal, so to speak. So this information, whether you're abroad or in the United States, will still be relevant. And so a lot of times people are confused when they see sexual violence, then they hear sexual assault. These are interchangeable. These are terms that are umbrella terms to describe the sexual violations of your boundaries. And that's what we're going to look at right here. So sexual violence includes a range of behaviors that violate those sexual boundaries. Oftentimes when you are with an intimate partner, you are able to communicate what your limits are, what you will do, what you won't do. Those perpetrators who disregard those boundaries violate those sexual boundaries, and that will be considered a sexual assault or a sexual violent act. They also show no regard to consent. And I think this is very important to understand consent when you are traveling abroad. What does that look like? What are the consent laws? What are the sexual assault laws? How is it handled in another country versus the United States? You should always do your research on that. I would suggest even looking at hashtags with sexual assault in that country to see what the response is, so that you're well informed. God forbid anything happens in another country, at least you're informed on how to report this or how reporting is handled over there. Also understand that consent is something that is ongoing. So whether you gave consent to someone the day before does not mean that they have consent to violate your boundaries or to have sex with you or whatever it is the next day. So make sure you understand consent and understand that you cannot give consent legally here in the United States if you are under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Research that in other countries. Are those rules the same? Depending on where you're traveling. We also know that perpetrators manipulate that power imbalance. So one of the misconceptions with sexual violence is it is mainly about sexual gratification. It is really a power and control issue with a perpetrator. It is really about their sexual entitlement, their ability to have control over you and your body, the willingness or their willingness to perceive you as someone that is beneath them and that they can get what they want from you. They rationalize and minimize the violence, the sexual violence that they may perpetrate against someone. And then they also may exploit those vulnerabilities. So going to another country could possibly be a huge vulnerability for some, especially if you are not familiar with the culture, you're going, or you're the only one from the university traveling to that country maybe, or you don't know a lot about, you didn't do the research before. It is so easy to exploit that vulnerability of being new in town or in a new place. Most will abuse the trust. So they will build up this disguise of a relationship or a friendship or any situation like that in order to gain that trust and then violate it because they know your vulnerabilities. They know that you are here and you are still learning about this country or this new area that you're in. Another part of this that we like to share is information on sexual trauma. And people don't understand the far-reaching impact of sexual violence. There are long-lasting impacts from the trauma of this, from the trauma of a rape or an attempted rape, sexual assault. These things can exist or persist in ways that we don't necessarily immediately think of. And I think it's on the next slide as well. So some impacts from sexual trauma, we know about anxiety, we know about depression, but it can also be, the PTSD of it all. There are instances where, a smell can trigger that moment from a sexual assault, or hearing someone's voice can trigger that moment. It's important to recognize that impacts are different per person. It's not a universal thing where if you're sexually assaulted, you will be depressed, you will have anxiety. That may not be the way that you showcase the impacts. There is hypersexuality. Some people want to regain control, and they feel that gaining control is determining who they will have sex with, when they will have sex. Sexual trauma can impact physical, mental, emotional, and sexual health. It can also impact social relationships, sexual relationships. There are some people who may have been in a partnership, a relationship, marriage, whatever it is, and no longer have that desire to have sex or be intimate with their partner. It can impact your participation in school and in your work, or your day-to-day life. You can become disinterested in continuing with the study abroad program or continuing at your specific college or university. I think that when people hear sexual violence, they also automatically just assume that we're talking about rape and penetration, but sexual violence encompasses so many different things. There's sexual battery, so there is that touching for sexual arousal. There is groping, there's leering, comments. All of these run the gamut and are on the continuum of sexual violence, which STAR has and offers in a training on how to respond to disclosures and the dynamics of sexual violence. But I think a lot of people assume, okay, they weren't penetrated, they weren't forcibly raped, so the impacts, they shouldn't have any impact from any type of sexual assault. That is not the case. We know that regardless if it was sexual harassment through jokes or suggestive comments to, like I said, sexual battery, those impacts remain the same. You still will have, you could still have flashbacks, you can still be impacted long-term. Another thing that I thought was interesting to pull up, and I actually just added this because the numbers were updated, and I added this Monday, the estimate that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced sexual violence with physical contact in their lifetime. Previously, I believe it was 1 in 71 have experienced rape, but this physical contact denotes that either they were touched or groped, or again, it would go under that sexual battery, made to penetrate, being forced to participate in an activity against their will, that will fall under this. I think it's important when understanding concepts of sexual trauma, sexual violence, to know what your boundaries are, to know what you're willing or not willing to do, and to be able to communicate those things. If you don't feel comfortable or free to communicate your boundaries and your limits, then that is not the situation. I would suggest that that is not the situation you want to be in, or deal with that person. I feel like I've said a lot. I'm not sure what I missed. I'm sure I missed a lot. These are some resources locally or nationally within the United States. There's RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network. They offer a hotline as well as a live chat on their website. If you were to go to their website, you can immediately talk with someone in a chat. And then the Center for Global Education, I thought this was an interesting resource to kind of figure out what country you're going to, but then get some resources and information, laws, tips, handbooks on the customs of that country that you're visiting. You always want to do your research. I think that is a very important piece when traveling abroad. Do your research on the place that you're going. Know what safety measures are in place, how sexual assault is handled and how they respond to sexual assault cases, and know like what services are available if you're sexually assaulted. So for instance, in the United States, in Louisiana, you are able to get essentially what they call a rape kit, as many people know, but you're able to get a forensic medical exam as well as STI, STD screening and contraceptive for free during that exam if you're assaulted in Louisiana. Other countries may not have that, so make sure you research and get that information so you are prepared and well informed.
Our second speaker is Angel Upshaw from TASA. Angel is a senior majoring in political communication at LSU's Manship School of Mass Communication. Her advocacy work on sexual assault awareness began when she was in high school. A spike in human trafficking in her hometown of Atlanta during 2017 encouraged Angel to create the Garden of Hope project. Angel, along with other high school students, planted a garden to symbolize hope that victims of human trafficking will safely return home. The project was so successful that it gained the attention of CNN, who nationally broadcasted the project. When Angel enrolled at LSU, she decided to continue her advocacy by co-founding TASA. The LSU organization informs students about sexual assault, consent, and bystander intervention. So I ask that you please closely pay attention to Angel's presentation.
Hey y'all. Okay, so sorry, that's just me. But so as far as like who we are the child organization to STAR that you just learned about through Miss Angela. We got established in February of last year. That was a big, crazy time because of course we all know that in March, everything got shut down, school was shut down. So it was like, we got established, we got, did the paperwork and everything, but we weren't able to do any type of events or anything like that. We started getting like a little buzz in the summer, but anyway. So our mission, sorry, the video is in the way of my slide. Okay, our mission is to end sexual violence by educating the campus community, advocating for survivors, and promoting healthy consent practices. I will say that our Angelina and I's intention with TASA was more so to be like an educational organization. Just we want to inform our peers on preventative measures, what consent is and what it is not, just those type of things. But I will say, once I get to my next slide, the organization that we are now, we're still that, but it's much more, and we never had that type of intention, so it's cool. And lastly, just want to say, if you are an LSU student, add us on, if you want to become a member of TASA, add us on Tiger Link. Yeah, so cool. So as far as what have we done in this short period of time, a couple events that we did would include Coffee and Consent, which is this cool conversational type event. We rent out like a coffee shop. We rented out a Lighthouse last semester. Had people come in and, drink coffee. And we had a presentation by Miss Susan Beret from the Lighthouse program. And after her presentation, we had like little bowls of topics around consent, and just was just having a conversation with everyone about everything that consent entails. The Red Solo Cup campaign is more so when we did a social media campaign. You take a picture with a red Solo Cup, and you just it's about raising awareness of sexual violence. Survivor support group, I actually spearheaded the idea of forming a survivor support group through TASA. I always like to say this is a student-led support group. It is not to be used in replace of any professional mental health services or professional therapy. This is just merely, a safe space for peers and survivors of similar trauma to be, just open and as much as they want to be. It is a closed support group, which means that we don't open up our roster until the beginning of every new semester. So whoever comes to that first session of the semester is who will be allowed back in and out of support group. And that's just to ensure survivor confidentiality, safety, all of those type of things. And as far as like currently playing a monumental role in holding LSU accountable, so I know, if you don't know, there's like a lot going on with LSU right now in the media and just in general about, sexual assault allegations and sorry, my mind is everywhere. Faculty and, staff, whether they're covering up things or not. But as far as what TASA is doing, that's what kind of like put us on the map. When we first came back to school last semester, it was like quickly in November when USA Today, exposed LSU for a lot of disgusting things. And it was just like, okay, great. As soon as the USA Today article came out on Monday, we had the protest that Friday. Like we were like, let's do it. As far as other things that we've done, administrative things, we have like meetings with interim President Galligan almost every other week, trying to come up with a plan and just it's literally just us holding LSU accountable. We know that this is a very big university. We know that, these big, heavy topics can still get lost in other things that are prioritized as far as sports, for example. So I will say that in this work, as I'm sure that Angela has found out in her experience with working in this subject, it's very triggering. I know me personally, I am a survivor of sexual assault. So when I go and I plan and I organize these demonstrations, it especially the last one, it was very weighing on like my trauma and my emotions, and I had to just take a step back. So just saying that to say, know when you are triggered, know your limits, and know when you need to step away from something just for a little bit. I'm still going to make a change. I'm still 100% full throttle, passionate about what's going on, but I have to, just know that it's okay to step back and, take care of yourself. Next slide. As far as things that TASA can help you with directly study abroad, I'll just give a couple of tips. One, my biggest tip is that I'll say, just like Miss Angela said, knowing your research about these countries, also know your research and know your protections as a student. So in saying that, I'll just say, make sure you review the, they're not new anymore, but still updated Title IX federal regulations, just so you can know your protections as a student in general. As far as the other things that TASA can help with abroad, even though, not really while you're abroad, but when you come back to campus, we can refer you to the LSU Lighthouse program. As you can see, they provide confidential and non-discriminatory support services for survivors and students at risk of sexual assault, interpersonal violence, stalking, or harassment. They're kind of like I don't even want to say mini STAR, but like they're just like an on-campus in-house program that helps with these type of things. We of course our favorite place to refer students to whenever they come to us with an issue is STAR, but we also let them know that the Lighthouse program is very neat. I like to always throw out there, one of the things that they offer that I really like is that they're the people you talk to when, let's say if you get assaulted or abused on campus, they're the people you talk to get your residence moved. So like, let's say, you got abused in your residence hall, that's who you talk to who, makes those moves for you to be in a safer environment. So so as far as studying abroad, we got you, we want you to do it, but we have these resources for you just in case anything happens. Thank you.
Our third speaker is Officer LaShonda Boyd from the LSU Police Department. Officer Boyd has been a community outreach officer at LSU Police Department for 2 years. The community outreach team works diligently to assure the LSU community that they're protected and supported by the university's police. The team's responsibilities include encouraging students, faculty, and staff to engage with the department when they feel unsafe, hosting educational events that promote public safety, and managing the department's social media page. The team is also responsible for maintaining LSU's Shield app, which is an easily accessible mobile application that allows the LSU community to immediately summon campus police, file a report, share their location, or request campus transport. So I hope that you enjoy the invaluable information that Officer Boyd presents.
This page is just some community resources. We're going to talk about the LSU Shield app. Tell you some things about how important LSUPD.com is, and some things that we do on our Facebook page. I'll talk about all those on the end. All right, so we're talking about students going abroad. And as far as community outreach goes, LSUPD goes, the first thing that we want to do as police officers, community officers, is make sure that you guys stay safe. Just to give you some tips, some general safety tips, some things that you should know just when traveling, period. Not just abroad, but just traveling, whether you're walking around campus, going to the next state out of town for events or anything like that. Some good things are to always let someone know where you will be, what your plans are, and what time you expect to return. And with that one, we'll get into the LSU Shield app. So we have something in the Shield app. If you're a student, because parents can't download the app, students can only download it. We have something called the Friend Watch in the Shield app. And again, the Shield app works everywhere, but it's not going to work abroad. So if you're in the United States, the Shield app will work. So as far as letting someone know where you are, what your plans are, and what time you expect to return, Friend Watch in the Shield app, let's say you're on campus and you're walking from the library back to your dormitory that's completely on the other side of campus. What you can do is the person that you have set as your emergency contact, you can let them know. And so your location will start at the library and go to your dorm. It'll time you. So let's say your friend is your mom and she gives you 20 minutes to get from the library to your dorm. If you don't make it in 20 minutes, a sound is going to go off, a timer is going to go off, and she's going to call you. Probably if you don't answer, it's going to alert the police department that you haven't checked in after you were supposed to make it to your dorm. And an officer is going to go out and going to search your last known location, try to trace your steps. So that's one good thing about the Shield app. Another thing is planned ahead. You want to avoid going to ATMs or gas stations at night. Keep automatic teller machine cards, ATM cards, in a safe place, and keep your PIN secret. When possible, only use ATMs during the day. Do not place your driver's license or ID facing out. Inside a clear window, your wallet, or where others can see it. It's very easy for someone to, we always hold our IDs in our hands. Some of us have a bad habit. I can say I had, just learning more, but I had a bad habit of doing it too. If I'm going like into a party or into a gas station, anything I know they're going to ask for my ID, I didn't feel like bringing my whole purse or my wallet, so I'm holding my ID in my hand. And a lot of times you'll put your hand down, your ID is always facing out. It doesn't take long for someone to snap a picture of it or to, quick scan and read your address, pop up at your house, anything like that. So be careful not to leave or you're in your car, you throw your driver's license, it lands face up, it's in your passenger seat on your dashboard. Very easy for somebody to pass by your car, look into your window and get all of that information. Right, some more general safety tips. Never let any protective device, including pepper spray, firearms, personal alarms, cell phones, or weapons, give you a false sense of security. You must always remain aware of your surroundings. Trust your instincts. If you ever feel uncomfortable, call for help or try to leave the situation. Report suspicious activity to police immediately. Back to the first one. We want to talk about pepper spray first of all, because a lot of young ladies and young men have pepper spray and they have no idea how to use it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone try to use pepper spray that they've had in their purse for 3 years and it does nothing because it's probably expired, or either they don't know how to use it and hold it up and push it and pepper spray themselves. So it doesn't take but a second to read about the pepper spray that you have. All pepper spray cans aren't the same. The ones you put on your keychain, the ones you buy from like a police supply store, a lot of those are different. You don't know how they work. Don't just assume you know how it works. Make sure, especially any kind of weapon you have, a knife, pepper spray, a taser, always know how something works if you're carrying it and going to use it to protect yourself, because you don't want to get in a situation where you think, I'm gonna wait till the last second because if they do something, I'm gonna tase or I'm gonna spray them, and you can't even pull it out. You don't know how to use it. So your tools, make sure you know how to use your tools. Some more safety tips: record serial numbers of personal electronics on a property inventory list. Student personal information forms, which can be found at LSU PD. A lot of things that we tell students, in case y'all don't know or haven't been on the website and looked at the crime stats, the #1 crime on campus is theft. So, I mean, and it ranged from small things to big things. Small things as small as a pin, a personalized pin, all the way up to a vehicle, even more. So, especially with bicycles, TVs, cell phones, you don't think that you would have to write down your serial numbers for your items, but it is very important, especially if you're living on campus. The dormitories, we drop a lot of those forms off there where you can record your serial numbers on it. But if you're in a dorm and you don't have any, you can call me or Kim, Officer Bass at the police department. We'll drop some off. Or if you're near the police department, you can come by and pick one up. You just fill those out and you can bring them to your dorm leader. You can bring them and they'll have them on record. Or you can keep it yourself if you want to make a copy and give to your dorm leader, or you can keep it yourself. It's probably safer with you instead of just passing it out to somebody. But if, say, somebody steals your TV, you don't have a picture of it, you don't have anything like that, but you remember, hey, I wrote down the serial number. We have ways of trying to track things because sometimes people don't want to get caught with things. So what do? They go and pawn it. Our detectives have access to go and run those serial numbers through a database to see if it's been pawned anywhere or anything, any electronics or anything like that. We try to get your property back. As far as bicycles, we do have information. If you come into the police department or you want to email or contact Officer Bass or I, we have some information where you can go and register your bike. You can take a picture of your bike, you can put the serial number and everything in. And so if someone ever steals your bike, you'll have a way of trying to help us get it back. Do not leave your property, even if it's just a moment. Instead of carrying large sums of cash, use a debit credit card. Some cards insure property purchased with those cards against loss, theft, or damage. Safety first. Review local laws and ordinance of the place that you're traveling to. And this pertains to out of the country, out of the city, out of the state, because just because you know some of the laws in the state of Louisiana doesn't know all the ordinances in the cities that you're going to. Those differ, and it's a very thin line of when police are dealing with laws and dealing with ordinances. So, especially out of the country is a big thing. So, if I travel out of the country, I go and do research on not only the country I'm going to, the state and those laws there, because y'all know that the laws out of this country differ very much, and you do not want to get put in jail for something that you thought was legal out of the country. That's not going to be good at all, especially now during the pandemic. You might not get back in here. So you definitely go first before you travel out of the country. Make sure you know the emergency phone numbers for the country that you're traveling to. Carry your valuable items in your front pocket if you can, especially in places, large tourism places. People bump into you all the time, and a lot of time they're bumping into you because they're taking something out of your pocket. Watch people that are coming up close behind you. Try not to explore on your own. That's a big thing for me because I watch all these movies where these kids go abroad and they get kidnapped and all that because they want to go out and explore on their own. Make sure you try to stay in large groups. If you can't be in a large group, if it's just you and like one other person, we go back to the part where we're telling you to make sure you always tell somebody where you are, where you're going, how long you're going to be there. Give them a time to check in with you to make sure you're okay.
Our fourth speaker is Officer Kim Bass from LSU Police Department. Officer Bass has been a member with the LSU Police Department for nearly 5 years. Besides her impactful work as a community outreach officer and canine handler, she was chosen to become a certified women's self-defense instructor, which she has been for 4 years. She teaches rape aggression defense, commonly known as RAD, and equalizer women's self-defense courses at LSU. Both programs educate female participants on effective defense tactics they can use to protect themselves from a potentially dangerous situation. So I hope that you enjoy the essential advice she gives throughout her presentation.
What we talk about with women's self-defense is just knowing your surroundings. Officer Boyd and I see this a lot on campus where students kind of get comfortable thinking that crime doesn't happen on campus. So they're walking and looking down at their phone, or they have both earbuds in because, like I said, they are comfortable and think that crime does not happen on campus. And all of us know that there's areas just off campus that are really not good areas. And there's areas on campus that are not well lit, although we do the lighting surveys to go around each semester to check the lighting with these big oak trees and the lighting that was installed years ago. There's areas of campus that are really dark. So we talk about knowing your surroundings. Usually if you're walking and looking at your phone, you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and you kind of get auditory exclusion, and your vision you start getting tunnel vision. So just make sure, what I do when I'm walking, I might have my phone in my hand with me, but I'm scanning, I'm looking around, making eye contact. We always talk about walking with confidence. I can remember when I was growing up, my mom used to get on my last nerve because she's always like, hold your shoulders back. And I'm like, I never knew what she meant until I got older. And she explained that if you hold your shoulders back and walk with confidence, people are going to be less likely to mess with you because they know that they're going to look at you and you're going to basically kind of, tell them, don't mess with me. Also, we talk about when you park, if you're going to the grocery store or you're coming to your sorority or your dorm room, make sure when you're parking that you're checking around the other vehicles, because somebody could be in between vehicles waiting for you to get out. You can look at shadows and just kind of listen to see if anybody's around. When you park your vehicle, get out, get inside, don't open the door, turn around, try to dig things out of your vehicle. Try to have everything ready for when you park, you're getting out and you're walking to your dorm. Also, if you're going to your vehicle, do not hit the unlock button until you get close to your vehicle. And again, make sure you're looking for shadows, you're listening, you're paying attention to what's going on around you. If you're walking out to your vehicle, and I used this as an example last night, the Circle K just north of campus. Like if you're walking to your vehicle and somebody's over there by your vehicle, go back inside until that person leaves. Call the police, because you don't want to chance someone trying to get you into your vehicle and take you somewhere else. With the public transportation, I'm not sure if all of the students are aware of this, that everyone can use Tiger Trails. Tiger Trails goes all over Baton Rouge, so everybody can use that service. Where Campus Transit is for students, faculty, and staff. So with the Shield app that Officer Boyd was talking about earlier, you can download, there's a Translock app that you can download to be able to access the location of the Campus Transit and Tiger Trail buses. Also, if you're walking or jogging, make sure, I know a lot of students like to listen to music when they're walking or jogging, but try, if you're going to listen, just have one earbud in. So we do offer 2 women's self-defense classes on campus. The RAD class is taught nationwide, and that one costs $25 for all LSU, Southern, and BRCC students. It's a one-time fee that you pay, and you can go anywhere in the nation, and it's taught in some other countries. And you can bring a family member or a friend with you to that class. Public has to pay $45 per person. And normally we'll have like a mom come with her daughter or friends that come together, and it's taught over a weekend. It's a 12-hour weekend that it's taught. The equalizer class is taught in 4 2.5-hour blocks, and I'm an instructor in both of those courses. With the equalizer class, I can come out to the dorms, or we have 2 classrooms set up at the UREG that we can set aside for that class. And I like the equalizer class better because it's there's not such a time constraint with that class. So if a student has a question on a technique, then I can kind of pull them to the side and go over that technique. Where the RAD class, we have more students, so we're not able to do one-on-one, but the equalizer is typically 2 to 5 students, and to me, you get more out of it. And that class is free.
As mentioned earlier, our very own Marissa Baham is going to speak with you about some safety resources you can use while abroad.
So some of the resources, Angela already mentioned a few, both the officer and, lady from Angel mentioned the making sure you know what you're getting into when you're going there, and making sure you understand the cultural expectations and experiences that you'll have, and knowing that what you find, what would be offensive and an arrestable offense here might not be an arrestable offense where you're going. So really understanding that there's a wide range of interactions that you'll have as a human being in another country. So what I'm going to have Jasmine do first is click on the International SOS portal. So International SOS is LSU's emergency response for travel and medical crises. On the left-hand side of this page, Jazz is picking a country that we send students to, and it's going to load the page. And so if you're doing a regular program with LSU, you're most likely under International SOS. If you do a program through ISEP, you'll have a different program, a different safety response organization, very similar to International SOS. But this, as a LSU student, you have access to this information anytime. You can give your parents this member ID number, and they can access this website and get the same information. They can call International SOS and talk to them for an hour and a half about very simple things. That's what we pay International SOS for this service. So definitely log on and take advantage of it. And it will tell you what are your risks of traveling there. So right now, each country is going to have a COVID-19 impact statement. But what I want to do specifically for right now is up at the top. So you'll see there's a security, medical, and travel. I'm going to start with travel. And so it talks about how to get there, and then what are your visa requirements and passports and that sort of thing. All right, so another important thing, and this goes for anyone who is traveling ever outside the United States, is you should register with the State Department. The State Department has local embassies and consulate offices around the world. There are 45,000 employees that work 69,000 employees that work for the State Department. And some of those are real localized experts, and they can help you in almost any sort of emergency situation you find yourself in. There's someone always on duty at the State Department. And so you'll go on their website and you'll register with them. You'll also register with International S, by the way, but register with the State Department, let them know where you're traveling and when you'll be there and what are your expectations, all of those things. And they can help you out with any sort of cultural issues or laws. Like the officer was saying, if you find yourself in violation of a local ordinance or law, then you'll definitely need the State Department's assistance. Also, really engage in the resources provided by your host universities. A couple of speakers have alluded to there are LSU resources that are available when you get back. And that is mainly because the way the licensing requirements are in the US is counselors are only allowed to provide resources to you if you're inside the same state as them. So this is a really important reason why you need to contact International SOS to get a medical and mental health assistance from them. But as soon as you get back, you have access to all your LSU stuff like normal. I know that's not really helpful in the emergency situation that you find yourself in, but it is just a statement of fact. But your host campus could have some really great resources and services available to you. So definitely check in with your host university. I do want to say that LSU and Academic Programs Abroad takes your safety and well-being very seriously while you're abroad. We don't send you any place that we feel is unsafe. The State Department ranks all of our all countries in the world, and LSU says you have to be a level 1 or level 2. So that's the bottom level of warnings for you to be allowed to travel there as an LSU student. But that being said, dangerous stuff can happen anywhere. But we really encourage you to have a good idea of the cultural expectations, have an idea of where you're going. You know, you'll want to have a map with you, but you won't want to have your map out with you while you're standing there really lost and confused. Find some place that's a little bit more secure so you're not as obviously lost. So if you find yourself lost, and it happens to all of us, take a deep breath, take a step back, and find a cafe or someplace that you can go that's a little bit out of the street so you're not as vulnerable there. All right, you can slide ahead for me, Jasmine. All right, and the last one I want to talk about is Pathways to Safety International. This is an organization that LSU has no affiliation to. It has no tie to us at all. So if you are abroad and something happens to you and you do not need immediate medical attention, and you don't need to use your LSU insurance, and you need to talk to somebody about whatever has happened to you, contacting Pathways to Safety is a really great option for you. They're available 24/7. They are really focused on helping and supporting Americans while they're traveling abroad. And if you're finding yourself in any sort of domestic violence situation, any sort of sexual assault situation, they're really going to be very helpful for you. And it may be like the soft landing space you need versus letting LSU know. And if something happens to you, it may be very intimate and hard for you to share with other people, and you might not be ready to tell LSU. And so this is a great sidestep from that. And that's what I have. Thanks.
Now we're going to go into the Q&A session in which the speakers answer questions asked by the attendees, which you may also find helpful.
I guess mainly this addresses Officer Bass and Officer Boyd, but like really anyone. I know it's not ideal to be caught in the dark, but if you are, what are like the top safety precautions that you should take besides walking with confidence? Should you be ready with your pepper spray, or what are some of your top tips?
So what we tell students is you're always probably going to have this in your hand. So have the Shield app downloaded. That way you can have the Shield app open and there's a button on there that you basically slide and it calls us or wherever you're at, whatever jurisdiction that is. That way, if you cannot talk or anything, our dispatchers are going to be able to hear you and they're going to be able to see your location. So your location is going to be accessed while you're using that app. Also, what we tell students is, like I said, there's lots of dark areas on campus. A prime example is over there by LaVille. There's like a little cut through and it's kind of the grassy area. Instead of students staying on Campus Lake Drive and then cutting down South Campus, they'll kind of start cutting closer to LaVille Hall just to save 2 or 3 seconds. But that area is so much more dark than just staying on the road. And we just tell students to try not to save 10 seconds by cutting through dark areas. Stay in those well-lit places. Also, if you're out at night and you don't feel safe, you can use the Shield app to request a courtesy ride, or you can call our non-emergency number and request that one of our officers come and give you a ride anywhere on campus. And we even do it if it's just off campus. We'll give rides to students because, like I said, I know there's places on campus that are not well lit, and typically our officers are not tied up to where they cannot give you a ride.
So I wanted to follow up with that, Officer Bass, because and I noticed this happened to me when I was studying abroad, where I'll be walking at night, and of course I was with a group of people, but we'll go our separate ways. Where I'll go to my dorm room because I stayed on campus, and they'll go to theirs. What do you do if you were at your host university and there's no Shield app, and you do feel like there's someone who's probably stalking you, or you just feel like someone who's near you? You just know that something's not right, or that person they have bad intentions. What can they do?
So I would say listen to your gut and definitely call 911. Let us as officers be that determining factor on whether something is right or wrong, because we tell everyone we would rather respond to 1,000 nothings than that one something and that person did not call us. So let us do our job, because I mean that's what we're here for, honestly. And at LSU, we kind of have that luxury, Officer Boyd and I, of being in community outreach and kind of being proactive and being able to see those things. So if you're at another university and there's not a Shield app, just call 911 and just say, hey, I don't feel safe. This person is following me.
Could they also, Officer Bass, if they happen to be somewhere out of the country, could they kind of employ some of those same techniques by maybe using like the Find Your Friend app and like just kind of letting someone know that, so that someone can be called and they can kind of maybe start that chain of communication if something's not right?
Yes. And just make sure, like, when you're going out for the day, you're telling someone where you are. Even if your plans change throughout the day, say, hey, we're going to be going here, or we're going to be going to this place. That way somebody knows where you are all the time. I mean, I'm 45 years old and my mom still tells me, let me know when you make it home. And I'm like, woman, I'm older, but it's just letting her know in case something happens to me, because something can happen to us at any time.
Thank you. Nia, you have a question? You can ask it if you would like.
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, this has been an incredible conversation and has been really comprehensive, especially as a young woman who does travel abroad, or just exists. This has been very helpful. So one of my questions is, and this is for, the group, all of the speakers, over the last several years, have you seen any trends in terms of threats to safety, whether abroad or on campus, that sort of threats that are happening, that are more current, that you wouldn't really have considered 5 years ago or 10 years ago? are things that used to be of concern, 5, 10 years ago that are no longer a concern? I'm just curious about the trends and sort of safety that you've seen.
I think one thing that I always get questions like, is there a presentation or information, is something I mentioned earlier, just alcohol or drug facilitated assault, like understanding consent when there's alcohol involved. Like legally here, you cannot give consent if you're intoxicated. So just recognizing and understanding that if you are with someone who has had too much to drink and the intention was to have some type of sexual encounter, if they are tipsy or intoxicated in any capacity, know that that is against the law. You don't have consent still to have sex with them.
I would say being mindful about what you're posting on social media is very important. I'm a little bit older, like Officer Bass, in the mid-40s here. And so it wasn't as big of a deal when I was 20, but I know you guys have come up with this social media and putting your information out there, but being very cautious as to how much you're sharing and in the manner in which you're sharing it would be one thing I would do, to be extra careful.
Yeah, and I was gonna say the same thing, Marissa. The thing we're seeing more of is, people meeting through social media and they have no clue who they're talking to. And we all know, if someone's going to say what they want to try to get what they want. And if I could go back and educate the younger me, I would be so much better in my 20s. But I mean, sometimes we kind of have to go through things and we learn through life lessons. So I would say just social media, being careful with what you share and what information you share.
Thank you so much for watching the webinar, and I really hope that you enjoyed each speaker's presentation. Shortly, the speaker's contact information will be provided in case you have additional questions to ask them.